Well, welcome everyone to the Planning Committee this morning. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching on the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. The Council supports the principle of transparency and encourages filming, recording, and taking photographs of its meetings that are open to the public. Members are advised that this meeting may therefore be filmed, recorded, or photographed. Please can I ask that all members turn off their mobile phones to silent or to vibrate while the meeting is taking place. And there is no fire alarm scheduled today, so if it sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble at the rear of the building at the far end of the car park. Toilets are available on the ground floor and refreshments are available outside of the venue. Okay. So on the first item, does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Anna.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the local member, but I shall be speaking as a member of the Planning Committee today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to item 2. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of June. Are there any comments relating to those minutes? No contentions on the meetings. I'd also like to announce that we have 3 members substituting. We have Councillor Kindersley substituting for Councillor Batchelor, Councillor Murphy substituting for Councillor Gough, and Councillor Ferguson substituting for Councillor Sanderson. Thank you. Okay, so are we happy for the minutes to be approved? Yes. Okay, so we move on to the substantive work issues on the committee this morning. Item 3. So there are 2 planning applications, both of them covering the same site, and for expediency will be there'll be 1 presentation to cover both, and also 1 debate to cover both applications. However, we do need to vote on each application separately. Before I invite the planning officer to introduce the application, I'd like to draw the members' attention to the 2 amendment sheets circulated in advance of the meeting. Can I check that you've all had sight of those? Yes. Good. Yeah. Okay, so can I invite Deborah Jenkins to introduce the report, noting that she is supported today by the following specialist officer, Jolie Norris, who is a drainage engineer. Deborah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share the screen. Is that better? Thank you. So, as explained by the Chair, there are 2 separate planning reports with separate recommendations for members to consider today, and they are as set out in the title slide. 1 CCC 21259 full for the redevelopment and expansion of Milton Household Recycling Centre, sometimes referred to as HRC, and its permanent retention beyond the life of the adjacent landfill site. And CCC 21261 VAR. It's a complicated title, but I can explain to members. Extension to the landfill site and relocated household wasters site. So this is actually a Section 73 planning application to continue the development without compliance with conditions 17, site layout, 25, site restoration, and 27, restoration scheme of Planning Permission S0109 18 CW to create a landform suitable for the potential relocation of the householders recycling centre at the Milton landfill site. So to explain, the landfill and household waste recycling centre currently both operate under a single planning consent, planning permission reference S0109 18 CW, and the permission area is shown on my next slide. That permission for the landfill and the HRC is time limited, and the landfilling and restoration of the whole site should be completed in accordance with the previously approved and agreed restoration plan by the 31st of December 2026. So the current position without these applications is that the household recycling centre, which sits within a section in the northeast of the site. Ah. Okay. I may need some assistance with that, apologies. There we go. Apologies for that. So this is the current. Oh. Apologies. So the red line area is for the current permission that covers both the landfill and the household waste recycling centre, and which is in this northeastern corner here. And so the proposed development of the household waste recycling centre is to decouple the consent from the landfill site and to allow for the redesign, enlargement and redevelopment of the household recycling centre. And as noted in the amendment sheet, the reason that this report has been brought before members is that the landfill and HRC are located within the Greenbelt, and therefore the proposal to retain a redesigned and redeveloped household recycling centre in the location would be a departure from the development plan. So this slide is the site area just of the HRC as proposed. And you can see its context in relation to the Milton Park and Ride site, and then the village of Milton, the extent here. So this slide provides further details of the proposed redesign. The considerations that are covered in the report include the principle of the development, the location of the site in the Greenbelt, flood risk and drainage, and access to the site. In terms of the principle of the development, the proposed development would meet the need for the provision of a household waste recycling facility that serves both the current and future residents of Cambridge City and South Cambridgeshire. And according to the Household Waste Recycling Centre site search report that was submitted in support of the application, the HRC's current location off the A10 and A14 represents the best and most available location for a long-term facility. And the retention of the HRC in this location would also provide a sustainable solution to the management of waste in and around Cambridge. And this would include reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the impact on human health, well-being and air quality. The suitability of the HRC being located in the Cambridge Greenbelt is a key issue. So the proposal to redevelop and expand the HRC represents both a change of use from the consented restored landfill site and an engineering operation. According to paragraph 150 of the National Planning Policy Framework, these types of development are not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, provided that the openness of the Greenbelt is retained and there's no conflict with the purposes of the Greenbelt. So the proposed redesign and redevelopment of the enlarged HRC and two new proposed buildings would be screened on all sides by the adjacent landfill to the northwest and southwest, and woodland to the northeast and southeast. And the HRC is not visible from any public location other than a glimpsing view from the junction to the access road off Butt Lane. Therefore, the report concludes that the development is not inappropriate in the Greenbelt. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the landfill and HRC are located in flood zone 1, which is not an area identified as being at high risk of flooding. The drainage strategy report, which includes a flood risk assessment that's been submitted with the application, identifies that the redevelopment and expansion of the HRC and its permanent retention will necessitate the implementation of a new drainage strategy for the site. And the drainage strategy has been agreed with the local lead flood authority, subject to the inclusion of a condition on the planning application if it's granted, requiring the submission of further details. And Jolie Norris, drainage engineer, who provided comments on the report, is here today to assist members should they have any queries. In relation to the adequacy of the access to the site from Butt Lane, the Highway Authority initially raised an objection to the application, but removed the rejection when further details were provided, and those details were considered acceptable in principle, subject to a detailed design requirement being approved through an agreement under Section 278 of the Highways Act 1990. So the report concludes that the redevelopment and expansion of the Milton HRC and its permanent retention beyond the life of the adjacent landfill site is acceptable, and the offers a recommendation, subject to the matter being referred to the Secretary of State for further consideration, is that planning permission be granted, subject to the conditions detailed in the report. So the second planning report before members relates to the permission for the landfill site and is required alongside the HRC proposal, because in order to allow the retention of the HRC, it will be necessary to vary some of the planning conditions attached to the landfill planning permission. The proposal is to amend the previously approved proposed restoration plan, which is on the screen now, to accommodate and allow for the permanent retention of the HRC. The new restoration plan proposes an alteration, this is the new restoration plan, to the previously approved contours, so that it would create a final landform with a flat area, again in the northeast here, that would accommodate the retained and redesigned HRC. The application does not propose any change to the timescale for the completion of landfilling at the site, or the restoration timescale, or the waste streams, or any other operational matters that the landfill currently operates under. The application is merely to change the previously approved restoration plan to allow a supplementation of the new restoration plan, which would account for the retention and redevelopment of the HRC if that application is approved. There are no proposed changes that require consideration of Greenbelt policy in terms of this application, but a landscape and a visual assessment was submitted with the HRC application, and it identifies that existing tree belts around the landfill site are important in screening both the landfill and the HRC, and that these would be retained. In addition, the updated restoration plan includes extra tree planting, hedgerow and grassland planting to provide enhanced wildlife habitat and corridors. And the new restoration plan also proposes a considerable uplift in biodiversity value, far exceeding the 10% biodiversity net gain aim for both habitats and hedgerows, and conditions are again proposed requiring a detailed landscaping scheme to include a programme of biodiversity net gain assessment to demonstrate that those targets can be and have been met. Therefore, the recommendation is that members approve the amendments to the conditions imposed on the landfill permission, so that the amended restoration plan is approved and can accommodate the retention of the HRC should that application be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to the debate, noting that Councillor Bradnam will be speaking as a member of the Planning Committee and has waived her right to speak as a local member. Oh, question. Sorry. Right, okay, so we now move on to questions for the committee to the officers. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm more or less, it's been explained to me by the officers, but I'm just got a little bit of a feeling I'd like it explained a little bit more about the construction works, the timescale from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. on a Saturday. And also, if we're going into both the construction delivery hours and the hours of operation. So my own personal opinion is that they're a little bit excessive, and I'd like just to some clarification on the nearest people who live around that area, and if it'll have any effect on them, really. Thank you. So that's probably the only questions I've got for this application. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. That's okay to respond to Councillor Connor. The landfill and household waste recycling centre are located off Butt Lane, which comes from A10, which is obviously a major trunk road. And then the main village of Milton is the other side of the A10. And obviously that is a source of noise in itself. And there is planting alongside the Milton side of the A10 that provides some noise attenuation there. In terms of nearest to the site, there are 2 farms. I will just check the apologies. I should have said at the beginning that I didn't write the report. Unfortunately, the case officer is not able to be here today, so I'll just check the report for you, but to see if there are conditions on noise. Obviously, we've consulted with environmental health at South Cambridgeshire District Council, and they did not have any objection to the proposed construction or working hours. So if you just bear with me and I'll get to the right part of the agenda and come back to you.
So just to say that we have the agent for the applicant, Claire Brown, technical director of WSP Environment and Infrastructure Solutions UK, together with Adam Smith, the head of waste management, Cambridgeshire, both available via Zoom if any of the committee members have questions directly relating to those issues. So do we have any further questions? Well,
No, I'm happy with Deborah if she can help answer those questions that I put to her. Thank you.
So the working hours are as existing. In terms of the construction hours, there's a construction management plan that is in place, that is conditioned, and our environmental health experts have explained that they think that's satisfactory. So there isn't a specific noise condition because it was not felt that one was required.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's just in relation to the so once this site is reclaimed, to what extent will it be covered by gas extraction pipe work? Because other landfill sites I've seen are absolutely covered in those things. So you've painted a picture of a nice and biodiverse environment, but in reality, will it be covered by gas extraction devices?
So to clarify that, yes, the landfill site will continue to need to have both the leachate and the gas extracted. And so those that equipment and installation will be retained there. But just to clarify, in terms of the household recycling centre, that area won't have any, it doesn't need any mitigation because it isn't landfilled.
Brandon.
I'm relieved to hear from Ms Jenkins that the initial concerns about drainage have been dealt with, and I can see we've got an additional condition, haven't we, in the amendments, which seems to cover the residents' original concerns to do with surface water runoff. So this is condition 8 on the amendment sheet. Sorry, it's point 8. Condition number 6. So that appears to deal with the concerns that residents had.
Sorry, just to clarify, that condition was already there. It was the reason for the condition on the amendment sheet. So it's just the amended reason, but the condition was already proposed. But yes, that condition is intended to address any concerns.
Any further questions on this? Okay, so we can now move on to the debate. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. Given that we've had a very satisfactory report, and I really commend officers for the thoroughness of it, and questions have been answered and no objections from anybody as far as I can see, then I'd like to propose that we move the officer recommendation for both items, taking into account we will need 2 votes. So I'm doubling my proposal.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to observe that since the existing household waste recycling centre has been managed satisfactorily, and this simply represents an extension and an improvement of that site. And to accommodate the needs of waste disposal in the area, it's important that the work goes ahead. I'm pleased that the drainage issues that were raised earlier on have been addressed, and also that the highways concerns about access have been addressed as well. And as regards the reprofiling of the landfill site, it's reasonable to say that I'm very glad to see that the original landfill application site has now been geographically separated from this site, such that the landfill site can still close as was planned in 2026, but allowing this site to continue its work. And I'm very pleased to see that the tree belt screening and hedgerow and tree planting strategies will go ahead to further screen the site, because it is, as we observe, in the green belt, and so it's important that it's screened properly from residents. So thank you very much indeed. I can second that proposal from Councillor Kindersley.
Yes, okay. Well, we've got a proposer and a seconder, so I can the recommendations, and can I so the permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in paragraph 12.1 of the report. Sorry. So can we take a vote on the first proposal? That's unanimous. And can we move on to the second application? We have already a proposer and a seconder for the second application. And can I move that the permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in paragraph 12.1 for the second proposal, the extension? Everyone in favour? So thank you very much for that. Okay, so now we move on to item 5, which is the enforcement update report, and the business manager of County Planning, Minerals and Waste, Deborah Jenkins, will report.
Thank you, Chair. So the report before members covers the work of the enforcement and monitoring team in county planning in the period between the 1st of June and the 31st of October 2022. Section 2 of the report details the complaints received and their current status. Section 6 of the report provides information on the types of site visits and inspections undertaken by the team in the reporting period. And sections 8 to 14 of the report cover some updates on key cases. Section 12 of the report relates to the failure of Mick George Limited to complete the bound and sealed surface of the Hall Road between the A10 at the Amy entrance and the Mitchell Hill mineral extraction site. And a planning contravention notice had been served on McGeorgia Limited. And I can confirm that at a site visit on Monday, that the work has now taken place. And so the bound and sealed service of the haul road is in place and the breach condition has been remedied. And there are no further updates on the report, and the committee is just asked to note the contents, but I would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Are there any questions? Councillor Bradnam.
I just wanted to thank Ms Jenkins for the work that she's done, keeping an eye on these extremely tricky situations and keeping her eye on the legal process and schedule. So thank you very much, Ms Jenkins.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chairman, sorry. And Councillor Kinderley's comment.
So we're asked to note the report, and everyone in favour of that. Thank you. Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we now move on to the final item, which is a summary of decisions taken as delegated powers. This is item 6. Are there any questions on the delegated powers items?
Seem to be sort of, there's not a lot happening. Is there a certain reason for that? There's not a lot happening, sort of delegated powers, everything. So I just sort of wondered, is there an explanation? Or is it just people are not putting in the applications?
I think there are a number of things pending, which will come to committee in the future. I think it's just sort of random variation in it's an interesting observation.
Before the storm, I think it's called, probably. I think we've got time to.
Sorry, Chair, to come back, but it's not the lull before the storm. This is the storm. There's 10 applications we're asked to note that have decisions that have been made, and they're not for householder extensions. They're, for example, six forms of entry to 8 forms of entry at Sir Harry Smith Community College. These are really substantial applications, which presumably take up a huge amount of officer time. So I think the fact that there's been actually 10 decisions made is probably very much like the Swan, paddling along the development control team, looking graceful on top, but paddling away like mad underneath. So please, let's not denigrate the amount of work that's involved here.
I'm not putting down any work the officers are doing or anything that's like that. That's not happening at all. So.
Your comments. Okay, thank you, members. We've been asked to note the report, which we duly have, and that concludes the meeting.
Thank you.